But you were a classmate of Barack Obama. You also advised him about so many issues like, the human rights abuse specifically, both not only just by Israel, but also in Palestinian territories. Um, uh, he was not, he had a stern diplomatic maneuvering, but there were a lot of promises that he was not able to fulfill. Be it about Guantanamo Bay and many others, though in the second term, he didn't have that kind of um, leadership that perhaps he had initially in 2008-9. So, what was your learning by working with him? Like, what kind of challenges were there?
Well, first of all, though we were classmates in law school, and though I, was an early supporter of his when he was merely running for office in Illinois, I have had no personal contact or relationship with him. And the advice that I and my colleagues have given President Obama when he was in office is, through written communications and meetings with his staff. My former boss, Ken Roth at Human Rights Watch, did meet with President Obama on numerous occasions to raise the issues that my division, the Middle East division, would tee up for him. But I think if you read some of the writings of some of his advisors who were in with him at the time, like Ben Rhodes, for example, I think he provides some explanation as to where President Obama started, which did start with a great deal of sympathy for the continued occupation of Palestinians, apartheid against Palestinians. I think he aimed and intended to change and shift U.S. policy with respect to Israel, for example, with respect to settlements and ending U.S. support for at least for settlements. But he was quickly attacked and sandbagged by his own party. The AIPAC funders and donors of the Democratic Party give just as much money to the Democrats, if not more, than they do to the Republican Party. That's probably shifting now. And so it was that pressure from donor support and the deep state of the Democratic Party leadership, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Vice President Biden, who were really just able to put the kibosh on anything that was going to too much upset Israel. And you'll note that even in his parting days, all he was able to do is not veto a Security Council resolution reiterating that settlements are illegal and should be sanctioned. I think that like a number of other things, President Obama prioritized what he was going to fight for and what he wasn't going to fight for. And in the end, the rights of Palestinians was not something he was going to fight for because he wanted to achieve, for example, his healthcare Obamacare deal. And that's politics, apparently. It's not my politics. I would just also further note that, the Palestinians are not the only ones to have suffered from President Obama's weakness and short-sightedness and docility to abusive regimes in the Middle East. It was that same short-sighted approach that led the Obama administration to support Saudi Arabia in its reckless, meaningless, idiotic war in Yemen, which, 9 years later still continues. And that was with the notion that, well, if we support Saudi Arabia in this short little war in Yemen that will certainly last no longer than a few months, because of course the Saudis and the Emiratis and this coalition will defeat the Houthis in a couple of weeks, that way we'll be able to get the Iran deal. That strategy was, of course, a colossal failure. And a number of people from the Obama administration put forward an apology letter about their failures, including Samantha Power, including Jake Sullivan, including Wendy Sherman, and many others who went on to serve in the Biden administration. But of course, it wasn't enough to save 300,000 Yemenis who were killed as a result of this mindless war, nor has it been enough to end America's continued support and protection of the ongoing war in Yemen.
And also what happened in Egypt in 2013, and what you also have mentioned and spoken about, what happened in Bahrain in 2011 with the complete media blackout. Um, but a lot of voices that are being trampled, a major chunk of that are also Gen Z, population right now, from starting from Columbia University. It is not the first time that students have protested. It was during the Second Gulf War, it was during the Vietnam War. But these days, there are allegations that by John Kirby that it has been funded by Iran, or the catchphrase that these protests are not organic, they're funded by Qatar, or these are taking away the power from the people, the students, that they do not know what BDS is. And it is too extreme to equate the apartheid South Africa with the apartheid Israel. Um, in my own experience of being a Palestinian supporter, there have been times when I have been humiliated with the posters calling for Palestinian justice being just like thrown at my face. Um, which is okay. I didn't mostly react because I didn't know the language of reaction. I knew the language of response. And the language of response is to educate. Uh, so how do you see the student protest movements? Because Netanyahu calls it anti-Semitic. Everyone has their own agenda in framing the student protesters, and the only person or the only community that is not getting the say are the students themselves.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that if there is a silver lining in this disgusting war that has taken the lives of 16,000 Palestinian children, I just think we need to remind ourselves and repeat that number every single day, every day when we wake up, is the revival of a student protest movement in the United States that has dramatically come into play and come into force to challenge U.S. foreign policy with respect to Israel. I think many of us oldsters had really very low expectations for the student movement and the youth movement, having apparently been as preoccupied with issues surrounding their own personal lives and identities and feelings and spaces and so on, that for me, it was very encouraging to see this generation stick their necks out and look and think about what's happening thousands of miles away to men, women, and children, students like themselves, thousands of miles away because of US policy, and connecting those dots and accepting that they have a responsibility to challenge these policies. I'm very impressed. I'm really, I feel like, okay, we're in good hands. The next generation is going to be actively working on justice and human rights and humanity. Those things have not been forgotten. And I think all of us should be expressing our appreciation, our gratitude, and our encouragement to these student protesters who, are 18, 19 years old and all of a sudden are confronted with the kind of attacks that I've been dealing with for 20 years. And I'm very knowledgeable and experienced about, but I don't think these young children, in many cases, or very young adults, are used to people calling them Nazis and terrorists and even worse, Jew haters and so forth. But it might be an early education to expose the way in which these accusations are nothing but empty rhetorical bullets, like the some of the rubber bullets that Israel uses against Palestinian protesters, and that they are merely designed to incapacitate the students and to silence them, because these students know better than I do that these claims are completely devoid of merit. So it's perhaps a rude awakening. Perhaps it confirms some of their worst fears and theories about the way in which people in America will work to discredit and destroy people who are critical of Israel by, for example, accusing them of being funded and supported by a terrorist organization. But it's not a bad education to have, because they will waste no time engaging or trying to persuade or trying to counter or trying to temper what they're saying and so on, because I think that they are seeing that what it is that the pro-Israel group is trying to silence is criticism of Israel. That's it. It's not anything else. That's the thing they want to silence. It's not any particular demand that the protesters are making. It's any demand that criticizes Israel. And once protesters and activists understand that it's irrelevant whether you put out a 50-page policy document calling for shifts in U.S. policy, or whether you say down, down, down with the occupation, down, down, down with apartheid rule. For the Israel defenders, it's all the same. You're all anti-Semitic. The International Court of Justice is anti-Semitic. The International Criminal Court is anti-Semitic. The UN Special Rapporteur is anti-Semitic. Everyone is anti-Semitic. The whole world is anti-Semitic if they criticize Israel. And, frankly, I think that these people are doing a tremendous disservice and harm to Jews around the world by forcing the world to equate criticism of Israel with criticism of Jews. The only people who are making that equation are the pro-Israel fanatics themselves. They want the world to see criticism of Israel as criticism of Jews so that they can silence us. But if they keep saying it, then that is how people will understand it. And that is not a good position to put Jews around the world in, to try to tarnish them and associate them and tether them to the grotesque crimes of the Israeli government. And I wish that groups like the ADL, which is supposedly meant to protect American Jews from anti-Semitism, would do something about it. Why don't they get the Prime Minister of Israel to stop saying that what he's doing and the bombs he's dropping on the heads of Palestinian children are a gift, are a weapon coming on behalf of Jews and American Jews and Jews all around the world? What a horrible, horrible equation of Israel with Judaism and Jews.
That is, when you talked about Palestinian children, a quotation that comes to my mind every day is, the smallest coffins are the heaviest. And the second point is that Jews have been one of the most forward-thinking, most scientific, very empowering, religious community, and to equate them into a binary of Semitism, anti-Semitism for political gain by the Zionists is a political strategy, but it will also jeopardize the safety of Jews who have nothing to do with these situations. The second is also Semitism, like Arabs are Semitic themselves. It's not just Jews, anything against the Jewish religion, because Semitism is about language.
But I mean, anti-Semitism has become a specially understood term to mean Jews. So the fact that Semitic languages exist and Semitic peoples exist doesn't matter. When the term anti-Semitism is used, it's a special word for racism against Jews. I think that many groups now are trying to have their own term for the racism against their own community, like Islamophobia. But it's, from my perspective, it's all just racism. Just as genocide is just genocide. Whether it's committed against Jews, whether it's committed against Armenians, whether it's committed against Palestinians, it's genocide. And I'm not someone who wants to promote special words that I think actually obfuscate the meaning of what it is we're challenging, and that is racism and racial hatred. And sadly, I think it would be better understood as a more universal term, as a term that I don't want to be the subject of racism. I'm Armenian. My people have been genocided. I don't want that. And, I am a Muslim in India, and I don't want to be have racism against me, and I don't want to be genocided. And I'm a Jew, and I don't want to be genocided. I think those universal terms are more appropriate rather than trying to single out racism and hatred against one particular group of people and make that a special, select, exclusive category of crime. It's not.
Yeah. Talking specifically about Armenians, your mother is from